the We Wreck Records podcast.
It really should demonstrate that anyone could do it.
The whole thing about Bratmobile is the energy. And
Right.
I was listening to Pottymouth today and I'm like, it feels like a bunch of girls in the back of a flatbed truck doing the twist, going down the highway, just not giving a.
Like, we didn't have flatbed trucks, but we had, cars that we would drive really fast down this one main street in DC called 16th Street. And I was the driver. So I was always like kind of racing someone.
Hey, this is the We Wreck Records podcast. This week we delve into a Riot Grrrl classic record, Bratmobile's Pottymouth, a truly DIY slice of moment in time, 1992 Olympia, through the lens of women who created a movement to make women's voices louder in music.
Where we were as women as musicians and women in the music community, and claiming that space. I think about that a lot in terms of how we were approaching the whole effort, like what became known as Riot Grrrl was really just about like, there should be more of us here.
Hi, welcome to We Wreck Records, a podcast by New Noise magazine where we wreck the mystery around albums that truly move the needle. Today's special subject, victim, celebrated album is Bratmobile's Pottymouth. We have drummer Molly Neuman and founding member and all of that sort of thing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. I think for those that don't know, Pottymouth was Bratmobile's debut album. It came out in 1993. It was recorded for the princely sum of a slice of pizza and a box of hair dye.
Love that.
And in 24 hours. These guys, I think it's almost an idea became a band. So you guys, in terms of the band, I've read you were going to do a radio show called Girl Germs, then you're going to do a zine, and then you told everyone you're a band, so you became a band. So tell us.
We didn't do the radio show, but we did do the fanzine Girl Germs. And we started our band sort of at the same time, and it was just Allison and me. Making up songs that she had been writing lyrics and I was learning guitar and we were inspired by bands that either had just, a really minimalist sound, like Beat Happening and, so one instrument or two and a voice was really informing almost everything that we were kind of inspired by them. And so it was really great to just sort of try. And I think that was the spirit of, the community that we were a part of was, if the music had, real meaning and real strength in that simplicity. And I think because we were, college students and just sort of finding our way in life and with, really big feelings and really big opinions, putting that all together to start a band it didn't seem impossible or didn't seem too scary. Even though we weren't, hadn't been like working on becoming, super proficient as musicians or anything like that yet. And then when we started our fanzine, I met a girl at a show. I was home for Christmas, visiting my family, and went to a concert and met Aaron Smith, who was had already been making a fanzine and called Teenage Gang Debs. And we had a mutual friend that introduced us, Calvin from K Records and Beat Happening. And I was like, nice to meet you. We're gonna, and I knew of her fanzine. So I was like a fan. And I said, well, I'm making a fanzine too, so I'll mail it to you. And she was really sweet and said, oh, okay, cool. But when I actually mailed it to her, she told us later, she was like, people always say that and they never do it. And so she wrote back and in that time, letter writing was the currency of communication primarily. Like phone calls were expensive.
Mad.
And, and someone that you didn't really know them, you wouldn't necessarily pick up the phone and call them across the country, but writing a letter, sending something was,
tape.
Tape,
Trading,
all of those
trading
things, right?
Hardcore and yeah.
Exactly. So we ended up, when I sent it to her, I said, we'll be back in DC over spring break, Allison and I were students at the University of Oregon. And so she was going to come with me to DC. My youngest brother was just born. And so I hadn't met him yet. So it was like partially that, but I was also, a college student, super into myself, like, okay, hi, baby. I'm going to go play with my friends,
Yeah.
and really we had said, hey, if we're going to be in DC, maybe we could jam together because we knew she was a guitar player. And that's how we started. And we had our songs, and she had some riffs, and we kind of put some of them together. And that's how we started our band. It was kind of an accident.
This show is proudly presented by Distrokid, and we have a special deal for all the musicians out there looking to release their new music fast. Distrokid helps over 2 million musicians around the world release on all major music streaming platforms and YouTube. You keep 100% of your earnings, can access a huge range of features, and if you like this show, support this show by taking advantage of this incredible offer. 30% off your first year with DistroKid. Just head to distrokid.com/VIP/WeWreckRecords. I would like to ask just quickly, can you explain to people from other eras what a fanzine is?
A fanzine is just the simplest document you could possibly have of, and it's just, something that you might want to replicate and hand out. And the topics vary. Like ours was called Girl Germs. It was focused on, women in music, making music, or, supporting music in various ways. And, but we were, also in a really sort of mutually inspired way. We had been, Toby Vale, who's the drummer from Bikini Kill, had a fanzine called Jigsaw, and Donna Dresch from Team Dresch had her own fanzine. And so all of these things were like kind of they were available to us, and we would like send $1 in the mail and get the fanzine back. And so a lot of it was personal.
Yeah.
Some, I know, like Erin's fanzine, Teenage Gang Debs, was much more like professionally designed. She was very informed by, she was already passionate about 60s mod architecture and pop culture. And so I think like they had more of like, there was a design system with fonts and, like a graphic approach.
It'd be weird if the Bratmobile zine was all polished and like fancy and
For sure, for
when the
sure.
whole thing about Bratmobile is the energy. And like
Right.
I was listening to Pottymouth today and I'm like, it feels like a bunch of girls in the back of a flatbed truck doing the twist, going down the highway, just not giving a fuck.
Like, we didn't have flatbed trucks, but we had, cars that we would drive really fast down this one main street in DC called 16th Street. And I was the driver. So I was always like kind of racing somewhat.
That's what it conjures in my mind. And I feel like talking about it being more, it's like it's almost not just about ideas, it's about the energy that the ideas are carried on almost.
Well, it's so true because, production values, as you can tell, were not the guiding force. I mean, we made it on a 4-track. It was a reel-to-reel 4-track. So, slightly higher fidelity than a cassette, but not much. And so like the compression and the constraints were completely, sort of informing everything that we did, like the entire approach to the record. The good news was that since we were a trio, we had an extra track to do something, right? So whether you're going to have background vocals or you're going to, we each had our own
Thought of that.
track, right? But clever producers, and Tim, who produced it, recorded it, is clever, and he knows a lot about, bouncing things and like the way that recordings were made, historically, but we had no label yet, really.
Yeah.
We had no money. And so our friend being willing to spend 24 hours with us before he went on tour to record all the songs, I don't know that we thought of it explicitly as an album, and more as like, we have this moment when we're all together to record these songs because we've got them and we want to document them. And I think when you look at the communities that we come from, DC and Olympia, documentation of that moment was a lot of what those records, of that time really were. And so it's interesting to think about it in any other way. I mean, now 33, whatever it is,
Crazy,
years. Yeah.
This month's episodes of We Rep Records are brought to you by Earpeace, the high fidelity earplug brand designed to enhance your experience of live music. Their lightweight, triple patented design basically conforms to the natural shape of your ear canal, which is awesome. And it's the closest thing to custom molded without the price tag or the chronic fear that you're going to lose them. Your future self who wants to listen to live music when you're old will thank you. For 15% off your next pair of earplugs, head to earpeace.com/pages/WWR podcast. We'll put the link in the description. Definitely suss it out. It's you said at the you said in an interview that this was very much the sound of 1992, even though it came out in 93. How
Yeah.
would you describe? I'm actually on a whole 1993 thing this week with this show, so it's
Fantastic.
interesting to get different perspectives on it. What was the sound of 92?
Well, I mean, I think it was that urgency and, sort of as you put it, the energy of what we were, people who were young, um, excited by, our friends, what was happening, the moment, the political moment, the moment of music that was being, created. And I think, just trying to keep up, I mean, part of when I think about Bratmobile and, we always had a less serious approach than our sort of
Yeah,
peers,
yeah, you're not writing
um,
political anthems like
yeah,
Pottymouth is
right. I
not
mean,
political anthems.
and
There's,
I mean, I think that
yeah.
there's an inherent comment on the on political times, and we were certainly like I think very fluent in politics from a sort of atmosphere basis, being in DC, but also what we were studying and sort of trying to contextualize where we were as women
Mm.
in as musicians and women in the music community, and claiming that space. I think about that a lot of in terms of how we were approaching the whole effort, like what became known as Riot Grrrl was really just about like there should be more of us here.
We should make friends. We should
We
talk.
should make friends, and we should also be on
Link
stage.
arms. We could link arms and not
And
get kicked in the head
yeah, yeah, but that there should just be it was, I mean, if you were thinking about it in terms of like the actual numbers, it's probably, one out of, yeah, maybe 5 out of 100 are, women were on the stage.
Well, girl power is such a powerful thing, though. I just think I think it's great that this moment happened. I think it's really interesting that you guys were all making zines independently and all feeling the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
what
Or,
made
or
you want to?
similar things,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and sometimes when I look back, a part of the sort of, whatever you might call like light bulb moment of,
Mm.
I wrote about it in one of our early fanzines that, because my dad and my stepmother had my brothers when I was already, finishing college and finishing high school and college, I was able to sort of just observe like, and I think about it now, when I was younger, my parents didn't have as many resources as they did when they were having my brothers. And so, some of the things that I was like, that's not fair, like, but the older one got a little drum set as a gift, like a toy drum set. And for me, that was just sort of an iconic representation of like encouragement into rock music. I was like, I never got that. I mean, we had a tambourine around my house, but we never had these sorts of, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you go for this? And, then when I got into high school and there was a group of guys that would play, Led Zeppelin covers or something awful during lunch. And it just never occurred to any of us, not only to be invited, but just to barge in. And so some of those just really fundamental sort of images, when I realized like, you can claim the space, but sometimes it's nice to be invited. It's nice to be encouraged.
Mm.
And if you do that intentionally with people who haven't been historically, maybe we'll see a different outcome. Maybe we'll see a different result, and maybe we'll see something that will blow your mind in a whole different way. And I'm really so, so honored in many ways to have been able to feel some relevance about this, like,
Mm.
30 years. It's bizarre.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
it's so just like just like sparking the flame of it feeling possible and having I think like, and for this album I feel like it's political in a more subtle way in terms of
Yeah,
women's
that's
like
right.
the
I
way
mean,
we
Alan.
experience the world, like the way women experience the world, like the voice inside my head kind of vibe.
Well, I think that's why it still does connect. Allison is, yeah, I'm sorry she couldn't make it tonight too, but she has a really, specific take on injustice, personal, and I won't speak on her behalf exactly, but, having been on stage, all these years listening to her lyrics, and some of them still crack me up.
This show is presented by Grillo's Pickles. Grillo's Pickles make the freshest, crunchiest, most delicious pickles. And even if you're not a pickle fan, you should try Grillo's today. Why not? Live a little. You can find them in the refrigerated section of your local grocery store. So chill out and eat a pickle. From
Not on Pottymouth, but there's a line in Brat Grrrl you can listen to on Real Janelle that is hysterical. And like when we play it, I just start to laugh, and I'm trying to keep it together to keep playing.
fun is important.
Yeah,
Fun, like,
for
and
sure. And I think that's why,
people. Fun is
yeah,
important.
and as at this point in our lives where we're still able to play and have fun, and it has a different dimension. I mean, when we were making Pottymouth, we also had a tremendous amount of angst, right? Like we were just struggling, as most people in their late teens and early 20s do. You don't know who you are. Everything is like annoying as hell. How every small slight is like, mountainous. Just like there's everything has such massive importance that self-regulation is a hard thing. You're discovering that as a human. Your brain is still developing,
Mm.
So I think going and we, made that record and released it in 1993, and then we played some shows, and then we called it quits in 1994. And for about 4 years, and Allison and Aaron had a new band and together, and then we started playing together again in 98, and have recently over the past few years started playing shows again, here and there.
Yeah, yeah. Little guest appearance.
Yeah, but I think when we started to look at this time in our lives, it was exactly that. Like the world is so bleak. It is so
Yeah.
painful, and you can't take any day for granted. If we have an opportunity to, take a moment away from work, sometimes with our families, sometimes with our families, it's been fun to like bring our kids with us and they sing backups on some songs and stuff. And so, just to find that, and to do that together has been, a real blessing in lots of ways that, I don't put a time frame on when it should end necessarily. I saw Gang of Four last night. I understand that John is, if not already 70 almost, and Hugo will be soon. And I think they're going to Australia in
Yeah.
the
I
next
knew
year.
Andy Gill. He was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day.
Um, but they're like incredible. And those two particularly, like Gail, who's playing bass, and Ted, who's playing guitar, are maybe a few years behind them, but like it's or even many more than that. But like, those guys are just so tremendous. And you think about all of the artists that are, going through different phases of life. If you have the energy and if you have the opportunity to not take it, seems like the pain, because what you don't want, I think for generations of, when we were so embracing of youth and, so proud of being young and all these things. And then you get to the point where we are now, where you're like, oh, I want it to keep going, like I'm so grateful that, you take better care of yourself, you do all the things that you can to keep it going. And if you have the opportunity physically and emotionally, that seems like the thing you can't really pass up.
Let's talk about a few of the songs. And just maybe some stories maybe we might not know about it. So Love Thing. You want my
Yeah.
youth so bad, you love to see me sad. I mean, it's powerful words. I mean, it's about the fetishization of youth and
Right.
the sadness of adhering to that. What
Well,
would
and
you not know
again,
about
because
that
Allison is, primarily the
lyricist?
writer of the lyrics, I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I think that one is a really good example of sort of this. If I was going to analyze it,
Yeah,
so
go on.
I'm not explaining it. I'm
Yeah.
analyzing my take is, the indignation of whether it was real or perceived rejection, right? And some kind of, but knowing that there's real care and passion and, affection at the core, but it's torturous, right? So, I mean, and I think we've been starting our shows with that song for a long time, just because like the riff is really solid and the drums are solid and like it builds up and it kind of chills. So, that's one of the ones that, yeah, we totally still play that.
Well, I think and something great about Pottymouth is it feels like I want to say it feels like feelings, but it's like if you get raised like
But like I said earlier, we were
like
big in our
feelings.
feelings.
It feels like feelings, but it's like, I've been reflecting a lot about, like femininity and all the kind of stuff we internalize and, like pressure and, the manosphere versus these kind of hardcore feminist spaces and, women being priced for compliance and all of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And it's like, it actually feels very provocative and political just to hear a woman shout on rap.
Yeah.
Like there's something
Yeah.
about that when you kind of like if you actually kind of spend too much time thinking about all this weird pressure on us, it was actually so provocative to be that and not just be shouting dudes. Shouting dudes are great. Look,
No, and I mean, and if you think about punk too, like
yeah,
that's like, all punk with guys.
yeah,
Like, a lot of it is just like full on, screaming or, just, it's the melody is, maybe there somewhere, but that's not the point necessarily. So I think that as sort of like how we were inspired and the shows we went to and the bands
yeah,
that we were into were also, kind of gave us that template that we could build on.
yeah, and make your own sort of thing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, for sure.
What's your relationship with punk and alternative music and what made you fall in love? I saw you saw like Melvins. Allison took you to a Melvin show.
So yeah,
Yeah.
in those early days of us getting to know each other, we went to her hometown, Olympia, and the show that it was very cold. I only remember that, so maybe January, February, and
Yeah.
in a really small hall that low ceilings and and I went in, it was like packed to the gills and just people like literally hitting the ceiling because it was so low, and it was Beat Happening, Nirvana, and Melvins. I think Melvins headlined. And yeah, I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible music. I mean, I think it was around when Bullhead came out by the Melvins, which is the blue record with the pineapple fruit design on it. And I love that record so much. And Bleach was out, and we loved Nirvana. Like Allison had a tape of theirs, and they did a cover of the Vaseline song Molly's Lips. And so I thought that was really cool. And, obviously
Yeah.
about me, and that was
Obviously.
absolutely not about me, or even in any realm of, relationship. And then seeing Be Happening, like all of these things together were just, sort of literally mind blowing. And then at the end of the sort of what we think of as the school year, so by like May or so,
Yep.
Fugazi was on tour, and they came through our town and through the Northwest. And so we went to all those shows, and Beat Happening was opening for them. So that was also an incredible, because Fugazi is, you know, super popular and had, you know, really, I mean, everybody liked them, but you know, there were definitely more men than women in
Yeah.
those environments. And then for them, and their music is, you know, much more full, you know, all the things. And Beat Happening is like the opposite. And, you know, so for them to bring them on tour, and I think it was the second time they had toured together, but, you know, and so Beat Happening was probably more known at that point, but still a striking contrast in
Yeah.
sounds, you know, and sort of like the atmosphere created. So it was really amazing to be able to see those shows. And that was, you know, when we were just going to anything we could, you know,
Yeah.
any show that was happening, we would go. Didn't really matter the genre, but punk was what we were into the most.
At this kind of moment, where Riot Grrrl's happening, where Pottymouth, you're making Pottymouth 92, it's like it's an interesting. What was like a typical weekend like?
Every break that we had between school, we would come together and write more songs and work on things. So by the next summer, we were going to do our own tour, and we did tour from the West Coast to the East Coast, and we are going to sort of end in DC and then hang out there and play shows and do other things. And so that was really what's kind of connecting what became the record was,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll record it, we'll go back on our own ways and then see what we do with it. So we went back to the West Coast, and I ended up moving. I finished college in December and ended up moving to the Bay Area. And I think Allison did a year or a semester abroad in Thailand. So that we kind of were all a bit all over the place for a while.
Yeah. It's interesting. How did it work? Like I know a lot of bands do the music first and then throw the lyrics on top or find a way to integrate them. But one would
It's
assume that you
it's
guys have
not
a bit more
it's
story.
not sort of hard and fast rules. I
Yeah.
think sometimes there were riffs that, you know, kind of started, and she might have had an idea and she kind of
Mm.
like had to finish it. And there's probably other times when she had like a fully baked
Mm.
song.
How did you find how did you kind of fall in love with the drums? Like how did it start? Because
Well,
it's
because we
not a
didn't have a
traditional
bass
female.
player,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because we didn't have a bass player, and because I had originally started as the guitar player, and when we first were writing, it was Aaron and I kind of writing together,
Mhm.
but the person who had been playing drums with us didn't work out. She didn't want to do it. We couldn't find anyone else, and I was like, well, I'll just try. I had played on a couple of songs, but it wasn't my first instinct. So
Mm.
then when I tried it, and it was just the three of us, so Aaron, Allison, and me, it really felt good. Like I think I don't know if this is like myth or reality, but like my memory of the first time we practiced together with just the three of us, we're like, oh, this is fine. Like we can do this, you know? But I wasn't really, and Erin had a drum set at her house, and so we could use that and practice. And that it just kind of I had to learn on the job pretty
Yeah.
much. By the time we made this record, I had been, yeah, we had just toured for like a month, and you know, I still hear mistakes because it was so fast. The deadline was, I think we recorded, had to play a show, and then had to finish like the whole thing, like the
Oh, in the
mix,
day, in the day.
like literally.
That's
And
wild.
then Tim had to go on tour. So like we really didn't have, there was no, it was like if it happened, it happened. If it didn't, like, oh well, we would
Yeah.
maybe do it in 6 months.
When did you kind of feel this drive to speak about women in punk and like what was there like a moment that
Well, it's, you
sparked
know, when I
you?
started college, I was very passionate about uh sort of racial injustice, and had been sort of studying that and when I was starting college, I was taking classes on ethnic studies
Mhm.
and trying to kind of, you know, learn all of the history there. And I had a teacher in high school named Mr. Fleming, Sherman Fleming, who was my art teacher and who was Black. And I had a strong connection with him, but like, he's probably like one of these people who like always seems irritated. Like, I'm sure he was slightly amused by, teaching, kids like me, but he was mostly like, you're pretty
Really?
painful, but I adored him, and I ate it all up. Like, it didn't turn me off at all. I was like, yeah, I just looked up to him so much. So when I was in college, like my first quarter, I sent him a letter and I said, I'm really struggling. Like, I really want to learn about all of these things, but I'm trying to sort of understand my position as a white woman. Like, how do I support this in the right way? And how do I, and I was kind of
Yeah.
looking to him for guidance, and he wrote me back, I mean, I'm so grateful for all of this, that like anyone would ever take the time to write me back. And I've had that happen a couple times with teachers, and it is really a gift.
Totally.
But he wrote me back and he said something along the lines of, it's really great that you're, interested and passionate about this, and like, it's good to do that, but you should also be aware of your position as a woman in society, and, kind of do your learning in that area as well. And
Yeah.
that was something that like my parents weren't, they were very pro women, but they weren't overt feminists, right? Like, that wasn't part of the rhetoric of our home, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that we should be, fighting for the ARA, or we should be doing anything that was, sort of explicitly pro women,
Mm.
other than my stepmother was an attorney, like a very like, you know, serious professional in a time that still that was becoming more common.
Mm.
It was not, women with, real careers and families or not, was, all of these things were kind of evolving. And so um that was a moment that sort of hit me like an anvil. And I said, oh, okay, well, that'll be the thing I start studying now. Right. So that
Mm.
was feminist theory and courses in women's studies. And simultaneously, yeah, Toby's zine Jigsaw was talking about similar,
Yeah.
feminist theory and political economy topics. And the blend of that, I think, as well as sort of like, what's our place? Like, we're young girls. We want to, we want there to be more people like us that we get to see.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I guess you kind of contextualizing it in the scene you're into. Like
Mm.
going, yeah, I want to be a woman. Well, where am I in the world? I'm in this
Right.
world. What,
Right. So the
how
things
do
that we were, had access to, magazines, record stores,
Mm.
concerts, we just started taking inventory of that. And that's what Girl Drums was. It's like, okay, here's these like girl rappers, here's these punk bands that are with, all women or mostly women. And then sort of like the dynamics around that.
Would you say I know you didn't write the lyrics, would you say there's a diary entry element to Pottymouth lyrics? It's
I
kind of
would.
like it's kind of, but it's kind of, I feel like that's kind of the connecting point because it's like, oh, this could be my diary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
What?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I think most the indignity of romance, that as you're becoming the the fantasy that you're gonna maybe find your one true love at 15, and that's that, and it's perfectly happy. That certainly wasn't our experience, right? And so trying to kind of comment on that and recover from it, I think was what drove a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah, the lyrical story. Yeah, what makes you laugh? Like, what panic? There's part of me that's like, well, this is a song being sung by a girl. This is kind of like a queer anthem, but I don't know whether like, I don't know what you, yeah, I don't know what you think of like, yeah, bitch theme. Let's talk about bitch theme.
Yeah, it's
If you
funny.
guys don't know, it's do
She
you
always
sorry,
she
you're
always says that, like, I think we have a debate, and that I'm she's like, it's not about you. I'm like, I like, because I remember it being like, kind of like we were arguing about something, and she's like, and then and I maybe said something like, you're such a bitch, and like, then That's
It's
what
dark.
but I can't totally remember. But some of them are stories of hers, like Panic is about a person who, that was her name. And so Allison's like, whatever schoolgirl crush on like the coolest girl that she's ever seen. And I mean, all of those things. It's I think important in the way that it was also not necessarily like that you would maybe hope that could be a queer anthem or find a way to inspire young girls to know that like that's perfectly normal and fine.
Mm.
But I don't think that was what we were,
No, you're just doing your
doing.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's just an interesting perspective. I feel like that album in particular just has such a unique perspective and energy and of a
Well,
time.
thank you. I mean, it's really fun to think about it in that way, because when I listen to it, I listen to the mistakes, right? I'm like, oh, I don't know how to
Oh yeah.
play yet,
What do you love?
and I hear like, oh, the way I play it now, I feel like is so much better, but um, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it.
What do you love and hate about it?
No, I mean, it's just exactly that.
Yeah.
There were things that I was rushing and the things that I would have, if I had a little bit more proficiency at that time, I would be probably much more solid. So I know how to, kind of like work the sections a little bit better together. But I love that it is, so Bratmobile. Like it's just, there's just no other way to put it. Like it's just so irreverent, so urgent, so you know, comical in lots of ways and catchy, like it's really catchy. So I mean all those things I'm really proud of.
Irreverent, comical, catchy. Those are great words to describe this. You have done a far better job than me. That is exactly it. That's kind of what was it like? What was the reception like with especially with like other kind of
I'm
like Bikini
blanking a
Kill?
little bit on
Yeah.
that.
But like
Um,
Bikini Kill, maybe like what was your relationship with Kathleen and Toby
I
and those
mean,
guys?
they were
Like,
super. I mean, as far as I recall, they were super supportive. And the thing that's different also between then and now is, there's so many more records every day that people make and release, and there weren't then, right? Like it wasn't a true event to make a record and have it come out, and so I think everybody was really supportive. I don't remember anything else.
was there any kind of pushback to the whole Riot Grrrl thing? Like, were
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
cool
yeah,
with
yeah.
it
I
or
mean, when
like?
we first
Yeah.
when we first started kind of talking about um like making our zines and passing them out and going to shows and being present and being bold about those things. Yeah, there are people who are super annoyed by us, and there are people who are really hostile. And I mean, some of them became our good friends and kind of maybe had a change of heart. But it's really like there was a phrase that we had to use, like we're not anti-boy, we're pro-girl. Just things that you just had to be so like specific about, because everyone was so tender and their feelings about you know the fact that you were saying, hey, there needs to be a little bit more balance here.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there should be maybe some of that was more polite or less polite or more antagonistic or not, like it all in accumulation. I'm sure there were people, and I think Bikini Kill got a lot more because they were so much more overt in a lot of the messages that they
Yeah.
had.
Talking about sexual abuse
I think
and
they got a lot more hostility and
yeah.
um, you know, like things that probably were not safe.
What what was it like? Like you guys have talked about like caring about reproductive rights and like apartheid and a lot of the things that, to be honest, there's a lot of parallel with what's going on right now. And I know
Yep.
Allison's mother ran the first women's health center in Olympia, which is
Yes.
super
Yeah.
amazing. And now they're
Yeah.
like, what was it like back then? Because now it's really dark, man. It's gotten really dark. The last 2 years have been really dark. Like
I
even
think it
outside of
was
America, watching it go down, watching
yeah,
like
it's
incubate
brutal.
fetuses and dead bodies, and like it's just terrifying. What was it
It's
like back then? Was it hopeful? Because
well, I
Jesus,
think
man.
the um Yeah, I mean, there was probably not the same as, even though, there was, in the case of Roe v. Wade, there was a movement to repeal it, then.
Mm,
And so the danger, there was an awareness of the danger and the possibility. But whether you or we had the, clarity of mind to accept that that was like really possible,
mm.
um, was, you know, it was hard to imagine that that would have been repealed as it has been. I mean, it's gone.
It's
And
crazy.
so, yeah, so, and now to just, all of the daily trolling that we experience from, the current government in terms of every aspect of autonomy and, uh, you know, fairness or, opportunity that you would hope to see have in a sort of equitably distributed way
Yeah,
is
it's just
just,
madness. It's just like watching it. It's just like, and just, I think that's why like movements like Right Girl are important, where there were moments where we've been loud about
and I think
what matters.
it's Allison and I both work a lot now, and we have, serious commitments outside of our band. But as we're sort of preparing to play shows this summer, one of the things that we've been talking about is, where do we bring, our perspective on, the current reality? Where do we bring just, the fact that we need to continue to hopefully inspire, the next generation and, those who are younger than us to find their voices
Mm,
and speak, as loudly as they feel, safe to, and to inspire through creativity again. And, I think that that's what's really, along with the fun that we get to have together and,
yeah,
the joy that we can create, like that is important as well.
yeah. Well, it was a big deal to talk about stuff like even yeah.
Yeah.
It was it's the level of it's almost the level of vocalization it seems in the last like I wasn't around in the like actively involved in the music in the 90s whatever, but it seems like
Right.
in the last 30 years the women's voices have just been getting louder, and it's kind of starting to get quite scary because there's all this stuff that's coming out and we're like, oh, no one was talking about it. This has all been happening for all of this time. It's not even things are bad. Things have always been bad, but women just
Yeah.
haven't had a voice. So I think
Yeah.
it's important, that yeah, I don't know what what you think about what
Well, I mean, that sort of does connect a little bit more to what I do today, which
yeah.
is, try to make, opportunity for artists, the access to the modern music industry and the ecosystem that exists, and have it be, fair economically, but also with, all of the tools and sort of resources that you need to have a career in
Mm,
music now. And it's it is difficult, but one of the things that I think is motivating us is that we still see that there's not enough balance in representation of women's voices. And, there's so much more genre diversity and regional diversity. And then you see, huge superstars that are women dominating, things
mm,
between, Beyonce and Taylor and everything else, like, but all the hits are really coming from women now.
100%.
But that's not really reflective of the whole creator class, right? And so there's still a lot of work to do
Yeah.
in that sort of more independent, self-releasing,
Yeah.
self-managed environment. But there are some really exciting bands, and I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do more of, is be more specific in supporting that development and working with, there are lots of organizations now that are doing this too, that are, especially in music production and, music creation. So, I'm
Mm.
hoping that we can be a part of the new solution.
Well, you're an OG DIYer, like someone had to
I
do it.
know, for better or worse, I'm still grinding after
Still
all this time.
grinding,
Like, yeah,
still doing it yourself.
well,
What?
I don't feel like I can get too full of myself with my reality here.
We like reality's reality, but you made something that still matters and people still love. And that's a
Well,
beautiful
thank you so
thing.
much. That's
Well,
it's really awesome to talk about it and think about it, honestly, because I think it's being on the industry side of things now
mm,
myself, it's really easy to put that in like, oh, that was a little cute thing I did. But to be reminded and to think it through is a gift as well.
well, it's cool. It's like, I don't know, I'm kind of fascinated with that moment in music history. I don't know, there's a part of me that's like I feel like it could have been bigger. I feel
Hmm.
like I feel like I don't know. I just want it to be bigger. I want it to go on
Well,
forever.
yeah, no, I hear
I
you.
want
And
it
I
to be as
think
big
that
as grunge. I want it to be fucking huge and yeah, I
when
don't
I
know.
started working with the Donnas, that was part of the motivation too, was like, they were a band that was more commercially minded. They were more serious.
Mm,
They had connections in the music industry outside of, what we were doing at the label. And and so part of my drive was like, this has to happen because we just need more girls to be successful
it's
in
important.
like the mainstream, but in rock and roll,
Yeah.
you know. So that was really, a lot of the motivation that I had. Like I love their songs and I love them as people, but I also wanted, things to be bigger. And I think they did get bigger than anything else that I had ever been exposed to.
Yeah.
But it is a hard life,
Yeah.
music. And it is not, I mean, even like I said, going to the Gang of Four show last night, like talking to them, it just, you have to stay up, you have to stay up late because you're just traveling to the next show. And, it's really unnatural and
It's mainly
unhealthy.
waiting. It's mainly
Yeah.
waiting.
And so, it's not even about like, I want to have so much money or I want to have a family or any of the other sort of, weird milestones that,
Mm,
society kind of imposes on us. It's just difficult. So anyone who can kind of find a way to have sustainability and be healthy mentally, physically,
yeah.
um, is such an achievement because the odds are against us in every direction.
It's a mystical thing when people coalesce and make music and go on tour and actually do it, especially when
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
that's a bit different, that's their own voice and that's what you did here. What would you want the legacy of Pottymouth to be?
Well,
Like,
I think it really should uh, demonstrate that anyone could do it, right? Like if you have, an idea and a melody and a beat and recording equipment, you can do something. And it doesn't, it's interesting in the modern music industry, they sort of like, demonize or, dismiss DIY musicians and, sort of like self-releasing artists as being, just like the standard isn't as good for all these reasons. But I mean, I think it's just a good example of like, what do you know about it? You know what I mean? Like, if you have the combination of all of these elements, let the artist actually tell, and the fans and the community tell us what has value.
yeah. What advice would you give to someone who has an idea and they're scared to start?
I don't know. I mean, I think to be scared to start now with all the tools
Toughen
and
up.
all the examples, it really, I don't know what that fear, you can see every level of, you know, uh, someone being a hobbyist in their bedroom to being on a major stage. And you see like, the story of someone like Chapel Roan who started, in talent show at school and then recording YouTube covers and then somehow, becoming like arguably one of our greatest songwriters right now, is like, what's the limit?
There's nothing holding you back. Go out there and make music, people. Do that.
Yeah.
Important.
Yeah.
This was We Wreck Records. You should go and listen to Pottymouth by Bratmobile. Have a moment, step back in time, get a sense of what DIY really means.